Call the meeting to order. I want to acknowledge that the Similkameen Valley in which we learn, work, and organize is the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Similkameen people and home of the Upper Similkameen Indian Band. We're going to make two amendments to the agenda before we put it for adoption. 11.1, a committee of the whole for June 14th. We want to cancel that. And then 11.2, just a quick discussion about minister meetings for UBCM. With that, can I get a motion to accept the agenda? Thank you, Councillor McLean. Councillor Willis, any comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 3.1 is the adoption of the May 17th, 2023 regular meeting of Council. Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Seconder. Councillor McLean. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We do have a delegation today, so I'll ask Ms. Kemp to come up to the podium. Each delegation shall be limited to 15-minute presentation unless a longer period is agreed to by 2/3 majority vote of council members present. The Town of Princeton Council, by resolution carried unanimously, provides an opportunity for individuals to address council as to delegations with regard to items included in the agenda, excluding bylaws in which the public hearing consultation period has been held. Council reserves the right to refuse an individual to speak if that participant if that individual has spoken at a previous meeting regarding an item. Individuals wishing to participate in this opportunity are required to put their name on the list, which you've done, and reference the agenda item which is to be addressed. Each person will have a maximum of 15 minutes at Council's discretion to bring forward their comments. And
thank you.
The mic is yours.
Hello, Mayor Coyne and Town Council. I'm here today to bring attention to concerns that we have over another gas station build in town, and now it's 2 gas station builds. With Syntex downtown and Esso, it will make 8 gas stations in town of nearly 3,000 people. We're not against development. Restaurants, stores, places to live on a site like Live in Its area do make sense. As citizens and town council, however, I do think it's time to question whether we need new large commercial environmental polluters in our lovely town. As hopeful as I was that this could be up to our town to say yes or no to what kind of development goes in, the current pending development application for the Esso business owners is not for council to approve or disapprove what type of business gets developed. We understand the development application is for you to approve on the design, which only basically says we can do nothing about another gas station, or should I say 2 more gas stations with Syntex. I'm looking forward to learning more about how some towns and cities are able to turn down business developments that don't fit what their town may need. I recently heard that Kimberly said no to a McDonald's. I don't know what the process is there, but I am looking forward to learning more, and this is all completely new and interesting. Also, I have submitted some paperwork there, just some documents and articles of Nanaimo denying applications for new gas stations, and there was also some in the state of California and whatnot, and councillors have said that they felt that they had to, and we get that there needs to be development and tax revenue, but I just wonder if there is another way, or if what point a town council can say this is not going to be a great fit for our town, and disapprove of the application in the first place. We only just found out about this development about a week and a half ago. Close to 100% of the people that I've spoken to didn't realize that we had 2 new large gas stations development to go in. I understand it would have been unwise to advertise this information, and I'll go to say so far that I think it could have been intentionally quiet. If this was a development that would have been great for our town and something that we actually needed, it would have been advertised from here to Vancouver. All of our current gas stations, so some of our main concerns are when it comes to traffic, at least for the one up at the top for Esso, all of our current gas stations that are currently beside the highway have access straight off the highway. Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure would have been consulted in safety and regulation for each of these developments as they are connected to the highway. It seems like a loophole that the new station is going to be using the Bromley Place Road, which is little more than a short driveway, to be accessed, and because they are using what is named as a road, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure doesn't need to be consulted on this. That's highly concerning. Sorry, just a moment. And can you imagine the semi-trucks and fuel tankers coming in and out of that tiny road consistently? There has been ongoing construction highway for years in this area, which brings me to instability of ground in the area. There's been many slides. Our geotechnical engineer's report for our home recommended not digging, and we built only on a slab, and you have only a small septic system for the reason of where we live. Digging and excess water and runoff for our area up here will lead to more sloughing and slides. I'd like to know at what point in the process will technological engineers be employed by these developers? Am I allowed to ask that as a question? At what point? Does anybody know?
Yeah, so we've in our internal referrals, the building department has said that it's likely geotech will be required regardless, but prior to building permit stage is when those technical features.
Okay, I figured. Thank you. And let's all remember the Texaco and Esso cleanup. I have a restrictive covenant order here that was made by law in 2019 after the old Esso spill area sold, and there's a restrictive covenant on it for 40 years. So for 40 years, what gets built and what gets grown on that property will have to fall within this. And oh yes, and does anybody, just sorry, off the top of your head, know the date of the Esso spill? How long ago that was? It was I wasn't here, but
50 or 60 years ago.
all right. And there's 40 years past 2019 that there's a restrictive covenant on that land.
I'm not going to debate.
Okay.
There's way more to that.
Okay. And I'm sure there is. The thing is, I'm not very good at this, but anyways, I'm just sort of trying to put it out there. I'm sure that, of course, there's more to it. I'm just sort of jumping in. Anyways, so with BC Green Energy, who will pay the remediation costs of bankrupt and close unnecessary gas stations? So, say within the next 10 years, can Princeton really support 10 gas stations? If our industries are still here, whether it's the mine or the mill or both or neither, what's going to happen with the extra gas stations that can't afford to stay open? And I'm not just talking about financial costs. There's long-lasting consequences for development decisions that we allow today. And I would ask, are the taxes for the town will gain in revenue really going to be enough to offset our future environmental issues and costs? Thank you. Can I give this to you?
Thank you very much. We'll move on to staff reports. First one, 6.1, development permit for 120 place.
Thank you. So we've got a development permit application for 120 Bromley Place. It's for the development of a gas station with a convenience store as well as a restaurant and caretaker's dwelling. The site is off Bromley Place. Is 3 large commercial lots with access from Bromley Place off of Highway 3. The subject property is currently vacant. The property is designated highway commercial in the community plan and zone service commercial. Service commercial allows all 4 of the proposed uses for this development. Is also in the development permit area for highway corridor, hence the development permit application, which addresses the design and architecture and encourages an appeal for Princeton highway access to maintain the site of our community. The proposed development is a 2-story service station, including 3 pump island, 1,900 square foot convenience store, and a 70-seat restaurant with a 2-bedroom caretaker's unit above. The proposal includes a landscape plan, which also meets all the landscaping needs for this area.
So I have a couple questions. You said it says in here that there's a future development plan for a car wash. Is that included in the initial planning, or is that?
That is not included in this DP. They've kind of got a couple other things laid out on their site plan, but it's not part of the current application.
Okay. And then, so we just heard from Ms. Kemp that there's issues with septic in that area. So how will we handle that? Will it be hooked to municipal sewer system?
Yes, our internal referrals came back from infrastructure saying they would require sewer expansion up to the location.
Okay, and then also Ms. Kemp spoke of the road, so that's a subdivision, right? It's not just a little driveway. It's an actual gazetted
Bromley Place is a dedicated roadway. Yes.
Okay. And how many lots are on that subdivision? 3. Okay. I'm just clearing up what the questions were, so I'm trying to ask staff. Oh, sorry. I'll speak up. So, okay, so that clears up those questions. I think Councillor McLean had some questions.
Where to begin? I don't feel like I'm that much different than the previous speaker in terms of probably lack of doing my homework. I haven't been aware of this for a long time. It brings up a couple of questions in my mind. And I have been informed, educated, or whatever, that the highways consideration, which I totally agree with the letters that have come in, that we have done our due diligence in terms of checking with highways to make sure that what that situation, that's the best we can get out of highways for that access situation?
Yeah, so MODI has a set of guidelines that we need to meet in order to get to go through their referral process for development permits. So if it's directly accessed off the highway, it would be a more formal referral. We did just in our due diligence provide our internal referral to MODI as well, and it came back with no comments. So the other piece to this is MODI approves our zoning at the time it's passed, right, and has allowed that use with the access that is there for that site when the zoning bylaw was.
And I realize that that's gone by. This what we're dealing with here today doesn't have anything. It's already been passed by highways and approved and everything else. The way the situation is. My point that I would like to chase now is that I don't feel that access is, whether it whether it was for a new development or for what's there, I didn't feel like I was safe. I've driven in there lots of times in the summer when cars are coming and going and going into one lane and they're going 80 kilometers an hour and blah, 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 and you're supposed to turn and all that sort of thing. So no matter what happens here, and I know that what I'm talking about has no effect or anything to do with this. It's already been done. We've done what we can. We've asked highways to look at it. They've looked at it, and this is what they're okay. So I know we're up against it. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't want to get council to be able to send a letter on its own to say this is, in my mind, this is not a safe situation. It could be improved somehow. And can it be looked at? Maybe they can have a look at it. I mean, my example of down here on Bridge Street and Highway 5, they did a heck of a job in terms of making that a lot more livable and everything else. I'm sure they can do something, but the way it is, as far as I'm concerned, is not a safe situation. And so, again, I know it has nothing to do with this, but I bring it up so that I intend to ask council to look at it. I guess the other point that brings up is at some point in time, when I read this material about gas stations and the problems with gas stations and everything else, I would think it's due upon council to have a look into gas stations. If other communities are choosing to limit them, in first place, I am not against any business. We can't sit here in my mind on a council and say, oh, we'll allow this business, but we won't allow that business, and we'll allow this business. You can't do that, in my mind. But we can determine whether, from an environmental point of view for our community, whether there's a limit to how many gas stations we could allow. I think it's something that we need to sit down and have a discussion. And yes, granted, it would have been nice to have it done prior to this, but we're up against it, and everything's being, all the I's been dotted and the T's been crossed and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely something I'd like to look at in the future.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the development permit from Mark?
When was the subdivision done?
The subdivision was in the early 90s. The current zoning, that CS zoning, is from 2013 when the zoning bylaw was adopted.
And then Modi signed off on it then?
Yes.
And this does fall in the zoning right now?
Yeah. And as Mark did indicate, that this internal review, or the consultation we sent out did go to them also, and they did send back no comment, that they had no concerns at this time. Okay. So, if there's no more questions, can we get a motion?
I make the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Willis is making the motion to approve. Elliot, any further comments or questions? I will.
It's a pretty bad situation when you don't feel 100%, rejuvenated about
So I was going to
building in our community, sort of thing.
So I understand your concerns about the highway, but I also, the concerns around the gas station are legitimate, like as an environmental standpoint. But the other thing we have to keep into consideration is we are in a major thoroughfare, and the future of vehicles is electric. Right now, Esso has partnered with, and I'm only using Esso because this is the one in the conversation. I'll use one other one as well. Esso has partnered with a company called Flow, and they have an electric charging plan to convert to electric chargers. There's a hydrogen fair right now in Vancouver to do hydrogen commercial vehicles. Nobody right now is going to be investing millions of dollars with the idea of staying 100% gasoline, because we all know 2035 things have to change. So if you go to Chevron right now, Parkland has committed, who owns Chevron, has committed to an electrification of their gas stations. They have 4 charging stations down there, two stations, 4 chargers, and those are, as far as I understand, those are still free to for use. And Princeton was one of the first ones on the list. We are on one of the most electrified highways in Canada, and Petrocan has committed to a electrification program as well. So as much as we're saying this is bad, the electrification process is going to take infrastructure as well. And it shouldn't be, I personally feel, that it shouldn't be municipalities and local government having to pay for that infrastructure. So if Esso and Chevron and everybody else has plans to electrify and keep it in the open market, I'm supportive of that.
But aren't you almost arguing against gas stations?
No.
Not electric.
No,
Not electric stations, but you're arguing against gas stations.
No, I'm not.
We already have.
I would disagree with that, because if they have plans for future expansion and they have plans to turn into electric gas stations, because
Why do
also
you need gas stations?
hybrid electric will still be allowed after 2023. So you'll still have some need for gasoline as well. So it's not going away, it's going to change, but the infrastructure needs to be there. So, you know, if we really want to play both sides of the card, there's that side of it is also to look at. And it takes a lot longer to charge an electric car than it does to fill up your gas pump at, you know, it takes 20 minutes to fill up on a level 3, roughly, to 80% so you can get on to the next station. So you're going to need the infrastructure.
Anyway, can I close by saying,
Yeah.
I think it'll make very interesting conversations when we have our debate about this business of future gas stations.
You betcha. Okay, we have a motion on the table. I will call it. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, next one is 6.2 BC Aviation Infrastructure Funding Grant. Gary, I believe you get to tell the good news.
Mark, you gotta share.
Thank you. So this is in regards to the grant we put in for the Princeton Airport, or aerodrome, for lighting. And we were successful on that grant. We received a grant for $916,000 towards that project. The town's contribution would be up to $300,000. It was a 75% dollar grant, which kind of we put through at the last minute. It kind of came up out of nowhere, and we hustled to get it in, and we're successful with it. And I'm personally excited because I see that as a big game changer for the town. And I think at some point with that lighting, it's going to save lives. And there will be, somebody's life will be saved because we will have lighting. And emergency vac or evac can come in here and do that. Above and beyond the other benefits that I can see as spin-offs coming from that. It'll open us up for possibly some commercial coming in here, whether that's a hybrid like the kind of the Uber design that we had talked about with Cascadia Air. But yeah, it's in my opinion, it's pretty exciting news, and we were successful getting it. I think it was announced a few weeks ago, so I think it's kind of the worst kept secret there was. But they told me I could talk about it after they put it on Castanet. So, but
Do we have the money?
not yet. Okay.
Good.
Excellent. Yep.
I was just thinking that it's going to be the big advantage for our housing to do with having access to the, a place on their property.
Yeah,
to be
that-
able to have a house and have a hangar and access to the runway with lighting 24 hours a day sort of.
And other benefits too, when the mine had that breakdown and they had to fly in that part, well, they had to wait till the next day to get that part in. So in the amount of their downtime, the cost that affected the local business was significant. Whereas if we would have had lighting, they could have brought that part in the night and cut that downtime down, right away. So I see there's a lot of benefits for that.
Excellent. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's
If there's no other questions, I'll ask for a motion to receive that for information.
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Willis, Councillor McLean. Any last chance for a question or comment? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.3 is a business facade improvement grant for 232 Bridge Street. Mark.
Thank you. We've got a facade improvement grant application from 232 Bridge Street, which is the Shoppers Drug Mart building. The application is to replace the siding of the currently faded blue design and replaced with a what's called Mountain Sage Green Hardy siding. The picture that was in it, he says is but nice gray.
This nice gray color.
So a green siding in Hardy, plank siding, board and batten, new signage for the building, stonework and sill replacement for the bottom portion, sidewalk side, as well as potentially timber posts and timber window frame for the project. The total project budget is around 80,000, so they will likely be applying for the total grant allowable, which is 5,000, so up to 50% of 10 grants. So.
Excellent.
Good thing we're not paying 50% of 80,000.
Excellent. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
So,
So moved. McLean,
Give them
Elliott.
more. I think that's it's
No, no.
such a change in downtown.
All in favor? Oh, now you got to make a comment.
When Jim Jackson first put this facade up, it just totally changed the complexion of downtown Princeton. It became a real showcase, and giving this a basement, I think, is going to bring that old glory back. So, yeah,
Perfect.
I'm quite excited about this.
Excellent.
Super. More than thrilled to support it.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Carried. 6.4 business facade improvement grant application for 195 Bridge Street.
Yeah, so we've got a second facade application for 195 Bridge Street, which is was around the corner cafe, Bridge Street Grill, that building. Essentially, this one is a repair and paint job of the stucco and the whole building facade. So, building will be painted white with the trim and fascia and awning all in black for this project. The total estimate is roughly 11,000 for this one as well. So, looking for the 50% of the building project.
Comment?
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Willis, second. Councillor Elliott. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to 6.5, 2020.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Can I just say that this would be the first year that we've potentially used all of our funding for this project.
I was going to ask, are we maxed out now?
This will max us out for 2023.
How much do we have left in grant and aid?
Look it up, but I think there's about 17,000 left over.
So we can squeeze one more out of it.
I would so move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we need to cross that bridge when we come to it. If there's another application.
Yeah.
If we get another application.
Okay. Okay.
Because they're both in the same budget line item on the consolidated, it's easy to switch them around.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say.
So we could possibly put two more in there then. Okay. 2023 property tax discussion, James. Now you can turn your screen back on.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I got to blind you.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behest of yourself, I was asked to make a presentation regarding the calculation of this year's property taxes. There were a number of concerns from property owners this year regarding some fairly steep increases, so we wanted to make sure that everyone was fairly clear on how those were derived and how they are calculated, so that everyone is kind of crystal clear on the process and how it came about. So I will be brief. This will not be a budget presentation. I guarantee it will not go 2.5 hours, 5-10 minutes. But I will start with kind of reviewing the process and how we got to the numbers we got to, and then we'll go over some examples, and I'll take questions from council if there are any. Can everyone read that? Yeah. Okay. So start out with sort of our budget processes on how we allocate sources of funds, because that's really where we have to start. That's where I start when it comes to the calculation of a tax increase. So a capital budget often has several varied sources of funds. Federal, provincial grants are number one. Obviously, every time we take on a capital project, we really try to look for a grant to cover as much as possible on it. Just coming from the Government Finance Officers Association conference that was recently held last week, the ministry let us know very succinctly that their area of focus in the next several years is going to be on asset management. It's also going to be on green infrastructure and meeting our carbon targets for 2030. So things that fall outside that scope, it may be difficult to find grants in the future, but we always do our level best. We have our grant writers now that review things, so that will come greatly into that. Regional district grants, so we do have limited ability to request a regional district help cost share when we build capital plans, specifically with the shared services that we share between us and Area H. We have reserves, land sales, water, sewer, arena. We have 12 different reserves, which we've gone over in the budgeting process. I won't review them at this point. Borrowing and insurance proceeds. Insurance proceeds obviously for the flood, and borrowing proceeds that were approved last year via the AAP process. The operational budget has far less sources of funds, however, any less important to fund with taxation. We do have some provincial operating grants. The largest one we have is called the Small Community Grant. So any community in the province that's under approximately 17,000 people receive a large operational grant to compensate for the fact that we live in a small area and our costs are a lot higher for things like capital vehicles and paving and contractors and things. That's what that's taken care of. Fire Smart's another great example of an operational grant. Shared services contracts with the RDOS, which provide various percentages of town operations meant to pay for Area H's portion of it. And sales of services, so landfill fees, building rent, arena fees, etc. That we try and, as much as possible, have services where it makes sense, have a bill for use that at least subsidizes, if not pays for, the service provided. So that's there. So, but any amounts that are not covered under these sources of funds are subject to be paid for through general municipal taxation. So it kind of becomes a catch-all. So we take our expenses that we have in the year, we subtract off the rest of our projected sources of funds from sale of services and grants and everything else that we find cash for, and what's left over, very simplistically, is what our taxation rate is, what we should aim for. When we do our, and just back up just a moment. So we are required to produce a balanced budget via the community charter every year. if we do have a budget shortfall, i.e. we can't find an appropriate number for increase to municipal taxation to cover all our operations, then either we have to go through a series of budget cuts or increase that percentage at the will of council. And we've all gone through that process the last 4 years. I don't think we have to explain how that works. So our tax rate policy. So it's developed in 2019. It is reviewed annually as part of the budgeting process. The tax rate policy, in a very, very simple nutshell, it is a 2-page document. It's produced in our financial plan every year. It says that commercial industrial tax rates will remain competitive and residential tax rates affordable. Those words come directly from the policy. We do compare absolute rates for residential property and per acreage rates for municipal taxes commercially, and present these stats to council as part of the budgetary process. Our residential rate last year was ranked 151st out of 160 municipalities for residential tax burden. So there are 8 municipalities in the province that have less of a residential tax burden than we do. And our commercial average, I was trying to pull the report, I couldn't quite find it by the time I had this process completed, but we're about 102% of average for municipalities when it comes to commercial taxation. So we're not too expensive, but we're also not the cheapest. We're kind of right smack dab in the middle. Okay, so our percentage increase. So how we try and piece together a quote-unquote ideal tax increase. So our current the finance's current methodology is to propose a tax increase based on inflation. So CPI is published by Statistics Canada every year. We get to find the CPI roughly in the middle of January, and it gives a very good indication as to roughly how much we want to bank on for increases in operational expenses for the year. If everything costs 6% more, it should probably cost this town 6% more to do business in general. Some things are more, some things are less. We do go through line by line in that budget to make sure everything is of a reasonable measure. If they're not, then we make adjustments accordingly and we repropose. This year, that inflation rate was 6.8%, which was rounded to 7 for ease of comprehension. And then we added a percentage to supplement reserves. Traditionally, since I've been here, that percentage has been 3%. That's how we got to the total of 10% for a published tax increase. 3% is a rough number. It's based on sort of our draws of reserves and to meet the Government Finance Officers Association of Canada and the U.S. guidelines that we try and keep our reserves at 32% of cash reserves at the end of the year. And as you see, this year our reserves stood at 61.2%. However, a large part of that is the water and sewer that we borrowed our $7 million for. When that is removed, our reserves that would be considered more traditional and less from borrowing become 32.1. So we're almost bang on that measure. So although 3%, some years could be 2, could be 1, could be 4, could be 5, depending on how we draw for reserves and what our future anticipated needs are going to be. Right now we're at 32.1% when that water and sewer project is removed. So we're pretty much bang on what our suggested reserves should be. And at the bottom, with regards to the capital levy. So we had the 10% increase last year through the AAP process. We were approved for a $7 million water and sewer loan. That is required to be paid off as per agreement with the Inspector of Municipalities when that bylaw was approved. So we petitioned council earlier this year to ask how we'd like to pay that off. It was decided to add the capital levy as a value added as a property value tax, which was then approved through the tax rates bylaw. So once we have our percentages down, then we turn to how those percentages are calculated individually. Of course, property taxes are roughly a mill rate, which is calculated from the budget to get the sum of the amount of money that we need in total for the year, multiplied by property assessments. To a certain extent, we can modify the mill rate. Obviously, we can't raise or decrease it without ample justification through our policies. But the town has absolutely no authority under the Assessment Act to have property assessments go up or down. That is all done through the BC Assessment Authority. And as we're going to discover, with their examples coming up, this is paramount. When people get that assessment notice in January, if they notice their assessment is up by a significant amount over and above what the rest of town is experiencing, it behooves us as ratepayers and as property owners to question that number. And if not, it can lead to some fairly strong consequences. Mill rates are adjusted for market-based fluctuations in valuation. So that hypothetical example below, a house worth $100,000 with a 1% mill rate would pay $1,000 in tax. If the average increase all over town went up 100% and the individual house goes up 100% as well, the mill rate drops to 0.5% to compensate. So we started at a base of $1,000, and then if there would be a tax rate increase of 10% that year, the mill rate would go to 0.55% or 10% of the 0.5, which makes it $1,100, which is a 10% increase. Obviously, if your individual house goes up, your increase is higher than everyone else's, and on the other side, if that goes down, the percentage decreases. But the average is always 10%. So now I'll get into the examples. I have 4 commercial examples and 4 residential examples to go over. Each of these represent a property in the municipality. It's interesting, the first 3 properties are roughly the same area of the municipality, and the 4th one is outside the area that the first 3 are. So keep that in mind when you take a look at our examples. So in this example, I've removed the names and the identifying marks to protect privacy. But, come on back, there we go. So this assessment went from $310,000 to $435,000, which is an increase of 40%. You have to remember the average increase in the municipality was this year 16. So the fact that it went up that much leads to large increases in valuation. So as you can see, school tax, police tax, RDOS, hospital district, BC assessment, MFA, regional library all went up on this specific property between 27 and almost 50%. And it all has to do with areas of responsibility that are outside of the town's control. These rates are set by the province, by the regional district, and by various crown corporations for cost recovery. The only ones we truly control are the first 3, the municipal, the solid waste, and the capital levy. Because those are because of the way the capital levy works, if you add it back for the previous year, the municipal portion of the taxes work out to approximately 40% if adjusted. Essentially, if you take the 506.28 and you put it into 2022 and you calculate the percentage, it comes out at about 40%. The fact that the capital levy didn't exist last year means I can't calculate a percentage increase. Try and stick 2 divided by 0 into your calculator and see what happens. It comes up with an error. So that's Exhibit A. We'll look at Exhibit B, which is a property just down the street. As you see, it's almost the exact same percentages again. 43.5%. All the provincial ones have gone up more than 20%, somewhere approaching 50%. And the municipal levy is, when you adjust for the capital levy, is again about the 43% mark. So number C is the same area, again, another 3 doors down. And again, the increases went from 19% all the way to 40%. with the municipal rate as adjusted back in the 33% range, give or take a couple of percentages either side. None of these three property owners approached BC Assessment when they got their assessment notice in January. But all three have approached me in the last couple days asking why the massive tax increases. And that's specifically why, is because there is a definite increase in that area. And that's something only BC Assessment can really answer. And just to prove that it wasn't in those three basic blocks, example D is a different property within the municipality. Again, a 38% increase, increases in the well over the double digits in the school tax all the way to the regional library, and the municipal rate, again, when adjusted, works out to about 38%. So it's consistent amongst some of the commercial property owners that they received increases that were well outside of those large increases, or the average increase in the municipality. So I probably need to work on communicating that a little bit better through our website and through social media, that if you receive an assessment that's well outside the norm, please, please, please contact BC Assessment and start an appeal process as early in the year as you can. I've sent all four of these commercial properties the phone number for BC Assessment and had them and trying to figure out something after the fact. Residential property, again, average increase of about 16%. The municipal solid waste capital levy, with adjusted, goes to about 14% on this property. But the school tax to the regional library, you'll see that it's not just the municipal portion that's gone up. All categories have gone up by a significant percentage this year. Not just municipal. Property B, same thing. Property C, same thing. Property D, a little less. Different portion of town. This one is in the mine subdivision. But still, significant percentage increase in assessment, significant percent increases all the way down the board. So I will conclude my presentation by stating, again, this was a pretty significant point of conversation at the Government Finance Officers Conference of BC last weekend. We are not the only municipality that has had significant increases in their provincial requisitions and their municipal tax base. Most municipalities are looking at double-digit increases in property tax to try and stem the tide of inflation. We haven't had inflation in this country in about 40 years. And we're going to be looking in the future, when we make budgets, to limit our tax increases as much as possible. However, we will not compromise the financial integrity of the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I guess what I was also looking for was information in terms of, we had to raise taxes. What did we have to raise taxes for? What infrastructure projects? And you know, when I talk to people, they talk about the improvements we've made in terms of beautification and that sort of thing. And I try to get through to them that an awful lot of that money that went into beautification in the community came from grants, a big portion of it. So that's not one of the areas where I would agree with them. However, I'm looking for, I know we got a certain amount of money in terms of flood relief and that sort of thing, and I know, like the mayor says, we're still waiting for funding in terms of federal help in terms of the flooding and that sort of thing. But from my perspective, we went after that $7 million grant, and it was passed with no problems, from people agreeing that we needed to do things in order to bring our infrastructure up to acceptable levels in terms of age and not only infrastructure but equipment and everything. And so I guess that's what I was kind of waiting for in order to give me ammunition when I go back and say to people, we just didn't waste the money. We put it for things that you said you were interested in having happen in our community.
Well, and thank you, Councillor McLean, for your comments. You are correct. Most of the capital works that have occurred have either been covered by the provincial government through various flood relief programs or economic recovery projects from COVID and from the flooding through the federal and provincial governments. And that's a lot of the improvements you see. Statues, sidewalk improvements, parks, campground improvements, town beautification, flower beds. A lot of that stuff is covered by federal grants. In this presentation, the tax increases are largely spurred by projections of operational costs. That's largely what tax increases are for. We are not allowed to run a deficit, and we are not allowed to run out of funds for important operational activities that we do through the year. So it is imperative on us that we make sure that enough money is in our budget to be able to cover our operational needs. If we look at the end of the year and we end up drawing a large operational surplus, and we have the fiscal space, then we can dial back on it next year. But it's reckless of us to not think that inflation isn't going to affect the town and put our heads in the sand and decide that we're just going to go with a 3% tax increase even though inflation's at 7%. We will fall behind the 8 ball. The capital levy, the $7 million improvement, you are correct. It was approved by AEP with very little objection, but we are required through our agreement with the province to pay that off. And that's the capital levy. That's what that is specifically. So I hope that gives a little bit more clarity to it. But as for the grants, we're going to keep pursuing them, and hopefully we can keep the beautification going with what we have in reserve.
Who's the guy that wasn't in Rockbridge? Remember, he said it's not a great thing to be the least taxed town in the country, right? It's like it's not.
Yeah, that is
not good for the town, really. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good selling point, but it's not a good selling point to be the lowest taxes because you can't keep up with the cost of business. So one of the, actually, you brought up a good point, and that's grants. So one of the criticisms I think we get online and sometimes in the community is that we are too grant dependent, and everything we do is based on grants. Like, why are we always applying for grants? Can you explain why we have to apply for grants? Because I think there's a misconception that around why we apply for grants, and when we do apply for grants, they are specific for a certain project that the grant is made for. Correct?
Yeah. So when we do a grant application, they are often restricted to what you can use them for. Economic development grants are restricted to certain activities that will draw tourism or draw economic activity to the municipality. There's almost no operational grants that exist. Outside the Small Communities Grant and some Fire Smart stuff that we have fully taken advantage of, that are a mix of operational and capital, the province does not issue grants to supplement property tax, period. They don't do it anywhere in the province. I don't think they would ever do it. They didn't do it during COVID. It's just not, they're not in the business of doing that. So they really want property taxes to be one of the pillars of funding operational in the future. It's come up many times in my office why we're paying for statues. And the statue program is an economic development driver, again funded through grants, to kickstart the program, and we've put a couple of years projected funding through land sales. When we sell land within the municipality, they can be used, they're put into reserve automatically through the land sales reserve, and they can be used for expenses of land, improvements, or other assets of a capital nature. So the statutes apply in that situation, but we cannot sell land and reduce property tax. It doesn't fit within the framework of the community charter. Not only is it rather shady to do that, it's also not sustainable, because we cannot sell 3% more land every year in perpetuity. We'll run out of land. It's a non-sustainable course of action to try and fund municipal property taxes that way. So it becomes a defeating prophecy. So in general, we don't do it, and not seeking grants is a bad proposition as well. We want to seek as many grants as we can. Let's face it. We want to try and keep the burden to taxpayers as low as possible. That's all our mandates here. But we also want to make sure that we are that we have the fiscal space to be able to do things outside of waiting for a grant to come in, to be able to fund capital works. That's kind of been the Achilles heel of this municipality for decades, is we don't do a capital work unless there's a grant that goes along with it that pays 90% of it. Well, if the province isn't releasing grants for that, we don't do the work.
And most grants now are 75 to 80%, and then you have to pick up the rest. So.
And we're behind the 8 ball because we've done that. So I commend council for their leadership and their proactivity about getting out in front of some of these water and sewer projects, because if we don't, then there could be dire economic or environmental damage that happens to the municipality because of it.
Thank you. Does anybody else? Yep.
I think there's something to be said as well for if people are talking about certain money goes to certain projects. I think there's something to be said for seeing ahead in terms of projects that we would like to see happen, but we don't have the funding for, to be able to put together a proposal. I know it's extra work and everything else, but if it's sitting there, and then how the grant system goes along, it comes up and you're ready and able to be able to get that application in there first thing. You know, at least if you've started part of it or whatever. Finally, we come to these decisions about this budget and everything else as a result of working together with staff. But the final word comes down to council. This is not this is passed, worked on and passed by council. We are the ones that are responsible for it finally. So if people want to complain, they shouldn't be complaining to the girls or anybody else. They should be talking to us. But we can, with the information that you've said today and that sort of thing, we're able to say, folks, you elected somebody that wants to see this community improved, maintained and improved. If you want somebody that isn't going to look after it or whatever and not spend any money, then maybe you need to elect someone else. And I'm speaking only for myself.
Yeah. And you are absolutely right. So the mechanical parts of putting together a budget and mathematics and everything else notwithstanding, it's a little easier if I field those kind of questions. But absolutely, when it comes to vision and it comes to the priorities of the municipality, that's 100% in the hands of council, and we're always happy to forward our questions off to you guys if at all possible.
Thank you. And we have missed grants because we didn't have shelf-ready projects, and that's painful to do because there's been some big grants that we've missed out on.
No kidding.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again, James. I hope that clears up for some of the confusion out there. We're going to go to council reports, and I'm going to start with Councillor Willis because he's all by himself over here on this side.
No media reports, but just a reminder, the rodeos this weekend, a couple pretty good turnout again, I hope.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor, we're going to go Councillor McLean, then Councillor Elliott. Because he's sitting there looking at you, so like you might as well go first.
I have nothing to report other than my visual report on, I don't know what's happening on our main street, but it looks like it's going to be fantastic when it's finished.
Oh, with that, Gary, do you want to give us a quick update on what's going on there? And then I'll go to Councillor. Give me time to figure out what I did.
As long as it doesn't take as long as the post office.
It will not take as long as the post office. I was hoping to get an update today from our contractors on the boardwalk, but I didn't hear back from them. I tried to get hold of them right before we came in here. But I talked to them last week. They said they were going to be coming in this week. The ground is all prepped and ready to go at the visitor center, so we're ready to put the boardwalk in there completely. The ground is ready for them to prep now in front of the plaza as of today, so we're good there. Despite the unforeseen things that we found, fountains, sidewalks under sidewalks, and I don't know how we would have known any of that stuff was there because it's been there for a long time. So in light of that, we've still been able to move forward. Town crew's been fantastic. We've got some great people on town crew that are doing the work down at that plaza, and I think they're taking real ownership in it. And I love going down there to check in on them and see how they're doing, and they're very enthusiastic about the whole thing. And I think it's reflected in the quality that's being done down there. That wall crumbling that was there was actually not the worst thing that happened. That interior wall, it's going to look a lot better now with the blocks. We're waiting on building permit for the RV park. I know that's a little off everybody's vision, like you don't see that as easily, but that's what we're waiting for there. Everything is done. Band shell is, building permits are coming in, and the same with the development permits for that. The drawings are done. I've seen them this morning, and that will hopefully be getting installed here within the next month. We've got some new signage that's going to be installed in the next 2 weeks. That's all part of this as well. And yeah, I'm hoping cautiously for beginning August. I'd like to see, I'm hoping it's beginning of August. I was initially hoping for a May long weekend, but I think I overshot my expectations there a little bit. Based on the archaeological finds that we found.
Not literal archaeological
No.
finds.
Princeton relics.
The foundation of an ancient building made of concrete. It was the Romans.
And I don't think those were Roman baths.
Do you know what that was? It's from the old department store that was there. When the department store burned down, the sidewalk used to be smaller at the time. So when the department stores burned down and they say overweighty, put the parking lot up to the edge of the concrete, and that's why the divide is where it's at. So that's a little tidbit of history for you there. So then they just put the sidewalk on top of the old foundation. So, thanks, Gary. Councillor Elliott, it's your turn now.
Okay. I'm going to try to give you an abbreviated report. Went to the Carabinus Rodeo Parade May 22nd with the mayor. That's always fun. May 25th, I attended coffee with the MP, Dan Elvis, at a local coffee shop, and there were 12 people who attended. They had some great questions, and I thought 12 was not a big number, but he was in Kensington the day before and said it was less than 12 who attended the coffee with the MP thing. So in retrospect, he had a pretty good turnout here. Later that day, I attended the 9-day celebration downtown and did some one-on-one with our MLA, Rolly Russell. On June 1st, I attended the Emergency Preparedness Day downtown, and every Saturday morning, I've made an effort to go to the Chamber Community Market because I found someone who makes some really amazing sausage rolls. And that's my report.
Thank you. I'm going to go back a little bit further because I think it has bearing on some of the things that have happened in the last little while. Back on the 4th of May, I appeared before a standing committee of the House of Commons on infrastructure and climate adaptation. Fast forward to post that, I went to FCM in Toronto, and the whole idea we went was we were hopefully going to get a meeting with Minister Blair, Mr. LeBlanc, and the Prime Minister. Unfortunately, none of them were available to meet with us. The Prime Minister did present briefly at the conference, but he disappeared out the back door faster than anybody could see where he went. But that wasn't a loss, because I spoke with the Climate Caucus, and they are an independent group of over 600, I think it's over 650 elected officials from across the country, and they are dealing with the exact same thing, and they advocate on behalf of local governments. So with that, yesterday I got to present at a meeting with them, with senior staff with Infrastructure Canada. And I brought up some of the concerns, some of the same concerns that we had when I met with the standing committee, and some of the concerns around how the funding formula works and how the funding, how it's allocated and whatnot. And they're going to possibly do a follow-up. They're in the process of reviewing policy and how that money is doled out and how it gets awarded. So that's a really big one. And then I have another one coming up at the end of the month with, forget who it is, another senior staff member with the federal government. So it's opened some doors, and some pretty big doors. Also on the topic of FCM, Jared has reached out. While I was there, I met a company that does things around sewage lagoons and that, and they have a technology. Thanks for coming. They have a technology that should probably solve our sewer lagoon smell issues. So Jared's reached out to them to get some pricing, and they're willing to work with us on a pretty innovative way to bring that technology to the community. So Jared will be bringing that to us soon, once we get all their pricing from them. There was some other stuff there that happened as well, working with, we'll have a conversation in the future with Cooperators of Canada. They're an insurance group, but they are interested in post-disaster recovery and investing in communities that are trying to adapt to those realities. So they've asked for some information, and I'm going to get it to them, and then they'll actually, he's going to come out here from Alberta, I believe, to meet with us and see the sites and talk further. So when that happens, we'll have the staff meet with this team, and hopefully we can bring some funding to local residents for some of the adaptation that needs to happen. Just trying to remember when our last meeting was. I went to the rodeo with Councillor Elliott, or not the rodeo. We didn't go to the actual rodeo. We went to the parade. Good time. We got lots of hey, it's Princeton. Everybody always seems happy to see us down there. Unfortunately, I missed mining days because I was in Toronto. But yeah, I think that's the key thing. Oh, another thing that happened that was really interesting, and Councillor McLean, you'll appreciate this. The mayor of Kelowna on the 19th of May organized a mayor's meeting between the Okanagan mayors, and we met in Kelowna. And I believe it's probably the first time that the mayors of the 3 regional districts met as a cohesive group. We came up with 4 or 5 key topics that we want to push forward that are regional issues for us. So regional transportation, housing, those sort of things that we're going to lobby the provincial government as a bigger region. Something that we see with the big mayors and all that, but this time the mayor of Kelowna, the new mayor Tom there, he's great, and he wanted to reach out to all of us, and he brought us all together. So we're going to create a bit of a working group and bring break down into these key areas so that we can lobby the province on the same issues that we have. So I was blown away because I don't think that's ever happened as long as I can remember. Probably, yeah, two separate things, exactly. So that was exciting. So if anybody has any questions, if not, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, so we'll go down to correspondence received and file. We have 8.1 through to 8.5. I do want to just address 8.5. There is a comment period, and what it is this company is proposing a solar energy and storage project up near Aspen Grove. They have another one up near Ashcroft, I believe. The one in Aspen Grove, I believe, is power about 20,000 houses, I believe is what it said in the media, and then the other one's 30,000. So pretty innovative stuff, but they're in their package. There's the information. There's two public open houses that are on Zoom. There was one just on the 6th, which was yesterday, I believe, in Merritt, but the other ones will be on Zoom. So if you're interested, please check them out. With that, can I get a motion to receive 8.1 through 8.5? So moved. Thank you, Councillor McLean. Councillor Willis. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Go down to correspondence action requested. In 9.1, accessible BC Act requirements. Carrie, do you want to speak real quick to that?
I can real quickly. The province is making it a requirement that all municipalities in BC have an accessibility committee to assess the accessibility and then have a plan on how to address some accessibility issues.
Any questions? So the recommendation is that staff proceed with drafting the terms of reference for the required accessibility committee, and that staff draft a committee of the whole, or add a committee of the whole for review and comments.
I would so move and just comment that years ago they came and got us, put us in a wheelchair and rolled us around the town. I'm telling you, it was an eye-opener.
Yeah.
You thought, oh, it's easy for those people. You try getting in a wheelchair and accessing some of the places that you want to go to, it's not so easy. So I think it's a great idea.
Excellent.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
And, further to what Councillor McLean was saying, I was part of the accessibility awareness committee that organized that event you're speaking of. And yes, eye-opening even just for the committee members as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 9.2 is Rodeo Club has requested their request for donated funds of $50,000. So a while ago, Cub Right donated money to the Rodeo Club, but donated it through the town. And now the Rodeo Club has found purpose for it, and they are requesting that the money be transferred over to them. Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Second, that, Mr. Mayor.
Willis. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Because of this, so we will have a new policy. Carrie's been working on one so that we can make sure that we do this. We have a clean paper trail and everything, because we never come to this before. So nobody's ever wanted to give us money to give to somebody else like that. So that'll clear all that up. 9 point. Yeah.
I guess it's important, at least I learned that about this business years ago. 25,000 was donated towards Posse, towards a new bus, and we were unable to give a tax receipt for it, right?
James can speak to the best.
No, but that was when they got that money before.
People can donate money, but if they want a tax declaration receipt, then there's a process.
Yeah, so the policy that we're bringing forward will lay out the guidelines of how to donate money to the municipality if necessary. The other thing we run into is provisions of the Income Tax Act, which govern charities and donating for tax receipt purposes. So all municipalities across Canada are registered municipalities under the Income Tax Act, or registered charities under the Income Tax Act. So we are permitted to give out receipts by default. However, the Income Tax Act also states that any donation has to be, quote, voluntary and unattached. So those are the two general terms that the Income Tax Act uses. So it can't be involuntary, for example, paying a landfill fee, right? You're receiving a fee for service, that's not a voluntary act. You're receiving arena fees, or it basically covers all the fees. But the unattached issue is what we're kind of struggling with in the future, is to make sure that that when people donate money to the municipality, it has to be unattached. Otherwise, you're basically buying something on behalf of someone else for the municipality, which is not allowed to be donated. It becomes your bus, right?
Okay, so do we have, does council have the discretion to be able to direct that money where it feels?
Yes.
So I would think that if somebody wanted to end up in a posse bus, for instance, he just donated it to the town with no direction of where it's going to go, but the understanding that he hopes that council would direct it towards a posse.
That's right.
It's going to be covered in the policy and
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah.
Does that, the way I've described it, does that work?
That would be acceptable to the Income Tax Act. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We just can't say, here's money
No,
for our bus.
no, that's fine, but it still gives which, you know, it may open some doors in terms of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is June 21st, National Indigenous Peoples Day. So usually we give a grant aid to for this, but this year, because of some miscommunications and whatnot, it didn't go through. And so there's a committee right now working on putting it all together. So the request is that the town provide $1,500 in National Indigenous Peoples Day for local celebrations on June 21st, and that the funding come from the grant and aid budget line.
I would move that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Thank you, Councillor Willis. So the plan right now is to either have it at Town Square or down at the Métis office. We're hoping downtown. It's just having a kitchen is the hard part to make all the bannock and goodies and stuff. So any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And next one is third page. The next one is 10.1 to rezone 127 Tapton Avenue from RM2 multifamily residential to new comprehensive development zone CD3 duplex laneway. That's a nice title there, Mark. So now you can speak to it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a rezoning application somewhat attached to subdivision and development permit for 133 Bridge Street that was approved in 2021 for a mixed-use building with apartments above that project. In tandem with that project, the developer is also looking at two infill duplexes, a little more urban layout, tighter setbacks, and a project that doesn't currently meet any of our multifamily or duplex zoning. So they're approaching this project as a comprehensive development for a laneway duplex. So just access off the lane, not off Tapton 5A, with a tighter, smaller lot size, and still allowing a duplex to be built. So
is it going to be like a townhouse or a duplex?
It's going to be a duplex. The design is a front back duplex, so all the parking will be off of the lane, and access to the front, the Tapton side unit would still be from the lane access. So yeah,
They pursue the back, not the walk.
Yeah.
Like,
So that's very similar to the original plans that we were showing from the first developer. that
yes.
was looking at it.
Yeah, the plan has essentially stayed the same. The original project was going to be constructed in a modular fashion, and they've just converted this to a stick build and conventional framing. So nothing too significant has changed with the project. beyond that piece. The one comment would be that they've adjusted the proposed parking to actually meet our current parking regulations for the duplex. So that's a good box to have checked here.
Excellent. Any other questions? Motion? Thank you.
I would so move, and I ask, do you like this project?
Yes.
Now, is there sufficient parking? Are you happy with the parking?
Yes, the project meets the parking requirements.
It seemed to me that the other one, the original one, I had problems with the parking requirements.
Yes, for the mixed use development with the apartments, there was a variance in the parking for the on-site parking for the mixed use building. The proposed two duplexes are going to have the bylaw required parking.
Thank you. Okay, seconder? Okay, Councilor Willis. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And that takes us to new business, 11.1. I need a motion to cancel the committee of the whole on June 14th. We only have two things for it, and one of them we'll talk about next. So the other one we kind of already did. Thank you. Councilor Elliott Willis, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And 11.2 is we've been given notice that our request for UBCM minister meetings is time to start thinking about it so we can get them in, and this is one of the committee of the whole things. So I'm just asking council to think about who you think we should go talk to this year. Staff and I have already been talking. Of course, housing, and of course more housing is our biggest priority right now. And how do we move some of these projects forward that are held up by red tape from ministries other than housing? So if there's anybody else you can think of, just send myself or Carrie an email, and we'll put it on the list and what you want to talk about, and we'll go from there.
Could I ask staff to give me some direction in terms of what I should request with regard to getting some kind of message through to Minister of Highways in terms of that area that we're talking about up there?
So
it doesn't have to be today.
Okay.
Just if you come back with a procedure that would be acceptable to be able to, because in my mind, if there ever is an accident up there, and I haven't at least tried to get council to send something in, whether it'll do any good or not, at least we've tried to say something about, in my mind, it's an unsafe area, please could you have a look at it or whatever.
So we already sent it back to him anyways, didn't we?
Yeah, but we can still talk about highway safety in general through town. The speed limits are not being adhered to and whatnot. So we can, and even at that intersection, we could lobby for the speed limit change to be further up the hill, and whatnot. So there are things we can do immediately. Unfortunately, we don't really have a regional. We do, but we don't really have a full-time regional manager right now. Lyle and I can work on that. With
It didn't matter when they did anyway.
yeah. No comment on that. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Councilor Willis, seconder. Thank you, Councilor Elliott. All in favor? Carried. Thanks. Goodbye and good night, everybody.